Click. Patrol lights flash. An elderly black woman stands in a $1 million neighborhood. Lilac wool coat. Black cane. Not rushing. Not bowing. Then he steps out. White officer. Hand on his belt. Don't think I've seen you around here. Got ID on you. No yelling. No backing down. She opens her wallet. A metal card catches the light. His eyes shift. His hand moves off the gun. Because the woman he just tried to check is a federal judge. Not just any judge. She once authorized investigations into his own department. What state do you live in? And does justice walk freely down your street? Or stand still, waiting to be questioned? Stay tuned, because the silence she held today becomes the subpoena he'll face tomorrow. The morning in Oakmere Hills was draped in a layer of sunlight as soft as silk, light so gentle it seemed to be hiding the secrets of million-dollar homes. A light breeze rustled the neatly trimmed edges of the lawns, blending the smell of fresh brewed coffee with the rhythmic sound of automatic sprinklers. There was no room for the unexpected here, and even less room for Marlene Whitford. She walked slowly but steadily down the red brick path. 68 years old, her posture straight, unshaking. A lilac wool coat, a wide-brimmed black hat, a black ebony cane etched with the initials M. Whitford held firmly in her hand. She wasn't lost, and she wasn't out to draw attention. She walked as if this very road had once been paved for her stride. But in Oakmere, too much confidence could be enough to be deemed a threat. A cruiser sat half-hidden behind a white picket fence. Officer Curtis Braddock, 41, held a styrofoam cup of cold coffee that had been dead since 6 a.m., eyes locked on her the moment she appeared at the corner. He looked at her like he was watching a suspect, trying too hard to act civil. The coffee wasn't why Braddock was out there. Power was. And this morning, that power had just found a target. A black woman in an expensive coat, walking too confidently on the soil of those who never had to prove who they were. Marlene didn't look back, but she felt that stare, heavy, laced with warning. Her cane tapped lightly against the sidewalk, just loud enough to draw attention. Deliberate. Precise. Braddock frowned. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't rushing. She didn't look like the kind of person he could intimidate with a glare, a badge, or a casual shift of his hand near the gun. He flipped on the radio, just in time to catch a snippet of a news report on a federal proposal for police reform, then shut it off. Bunch of bleeding hearts thinking justice is just paperwork, he muttered, getting out of the car, tone dripping with disdain. She was nearing house number 230. Her coat swayed gently with her stride. Not flashy, not fussy, but there was something about the composure in her walk that unsettled him. As if she wasn't just walking through this neighborhood, but walking into it with a purpose. So Braddock flipped on the cruiser's lights. No siren, just the slow spin of red and blue. The lights bathed her in color like a stage spotlight. But Marlene didn't flinch, didn't freeze. She stopped, like she was waiting for him to step into the role he thought he owned. The patrol lights reflected off her lilac coat, tinting it with a cold, bruise-colored hue. Still, she stood firm, cane grounded hand still, her head tilted slightly downward, the brim of her hat hiding half her face, but her posture said it all. No retreat, no submission. Officer Curtis Braddock stepped out of the cruiser. The door shut behind him with a final, metallic clack, like a gavel ending any debate. His boots hit the warm pavement, slow, heavy, intentional, like a declaration of confrontation. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. In his mind, the uniform alone should have been enough to make anyone bow. "Good morning, ma'am," he said with a mocking edge. "Don't believe I've seen you around here before." Marlene didn't respond right away. She let silence settle like morning fog, not cold, but enough to raise goosebumps. Then she slowly turned her head, as if opening a door inside her mind, eyes still not meeting his. "I've lived in many places, officer," she said, her voice smooth and low, like velvet draped over steel. "And in every one of them, I've met people who confuse silence for weakness." Braddock's brow furrowed. He didn't know what game she was playing, but he heard clear. No fear. No backing down. And that shook him. "Are you giving me attitude?" he asked, stepping in close enough that his shadow now stretched across the asphalt around her. Or are you just one of those people who speak in riddles to dodge a question? She lifted her head for the first time. Her deep brown eyes looked like river stones worn smooth by storms. No fire, no anger, just wait. The air between them thickened. No riddles, she said. I don't play with words. I just speak the consequence. If you're not ready for it, I suggest you change your tone. He scoffed, but his gut tightened. Suddenly, he couldn't hear the birds anymore, couldn't feel that pleasant sun. All that remained was the growing sense that he was facing something he didn't understand and couldn't control. Braddock clenched his fist. His eyes flicked to the cane. Black wood, expertly carved. Not a tool for the frail. A relic of earned power. A symbol of a life well-weathered. I'm going to need to see some ID, he said, voice louder now. But the edge had dulled. He was performing, trying not to show he was shaken. Marlene didn't flinch, didn't refuse. But she didn't obey right away either. She just looked at him, eyes saying what words didn't need to. I know you're kind. I met hundreds like you, and yet I'm still here. Are you ordering me or threatening me? Officer Braddock, she asked. Her tone wasn't raised, but every word cut the air like a scalpel. He stepped back half a pace. Not on purpose. His body had reacted before his mind caught up. And in that moment, Braddock understood. She wasn't afraid of him. She was testing whether he was afraid of himself. He adjusted his duty belt, palm slightly damp. It wasn't the weather. The sun was still soft, the wind still mild, but this black woman with her ebony cane and stone-set eyes had him rattled. You heard me, he said, voice now forced into something resembling authority. I need to see your ID. Marlene Whitford didn't move. A light breeze brushed past her coat, pulling the hem gently to one side. A moment that could have been serene, if not for the impatience simmering in a man with a gun. I'm not refusing, she said calmly. I'm just slowing things down for clarity. Slowly, Marlene reached into the inside pocket of her coat. Not fast, not sloppy, as if every motion had been choreographed like an old jazz tune, smooth, yet unpredictable. Her hand withdrew a small black leather wallet, worn at the corners but with a shiny clasp still snapped tight. Not the kind of wallet made to impress. The kind that didn't need to. She flipped it open with one thumb. Braddock tilted his head, frowning. Where's your driver's license? Marlene didn't respond. She didn't hand the card over. She just held the wallet open, tilted just right for the light to catch on the metal. A silver card, stiff, edged in laser-engraved trim. In the upper corner, a gold embossed seal of the U.S. Federal Court, Eastern District. Not a fake, not a library card. This was the kind of ID you didn't print at the corner shop. The kind you didn't explain. It spoke for itself. Braddock scowled. What is this? Some kind of souvenir from the county gift shop. Marlene didn't answer. Instead, she tilted her head, just slightly. The way someone who once presided over hearings would tilt their head while watching a witness lie under oath. I asked you a question, Braddock said, his shoulders tensing. That kind of ID isn't listed in the DMV handbook. Her gaze didn't change. Calm, still, but something in it was slowly draining the confidence from Braddock's voice. That card, he repeated, like he was trying to recall some long-forgotten training manual. What the hell is it? Marlene still didn't hand it over. She simply held it in her palm, open, like a sealed indictment, waiting to be read by someone who knew how to read. Not for you, she replied, her voice like ice sliding across hardwood. It's for the record. Braddock took a half-step closer, leaning in to read it more carefully. Her name was engraved in a crisp serif font, small but precise. And just beneath it, he saw it. Appointed U.S. Federal Judge, Class of 1992. He flinched, not from fear, but because the internal GPS in his head had just lost signal. He no longer knew who he was talking to. Braddock blinked slowly. His hand relaxed from his belt, no longer hovering near the gun, but not holding firm either. His eyes stayed fixed on those cold silver words. Appointed U.S. Federal Judge, Class of 1992. He said, his voice dropping out of its usual rhythm. You were a judge? Marlene Whitford snapped the wallet shut with a flick of her thumb and slipped it back inside her coat. I was the one reading the files your entire department kept formatting wrong on purpose, she said, tone as casual as if she were reading the weather. Also the only one at the 2021 hearing who asked why exactly 12 seconds of body cam footage disappeared the moment the victim stopped moving. Braddock stepped back half a foot. His expression changed instantly. No longer the look of an officer confronting someone who didn't belong, but of a man hearing his name whispered from a file he thought had been deleted. What file? He asked. Marlene lifted her head. A breeze stirred the brim of her hat, making it flutter like a bell moments before it rings. I remember names, she said. Some names never die. You were the responding officer in the case of Micah Carter. 17 years old, unarmed, not resisting, just wearing a hoodie and asking a simple question, why am I being stopped? That question was never answered, because 5 seconds later, the boy collapsed on the pavement. Braddock winced, tried to restore his composure. I was cleared. It was a complicated situation. The kid, he moved erratically. We couldn't predict. Marlene stepped forward. Not threatening, not aggressive, but with just enough presence to corner the truth. You said he moved erratically? She tilted her head. Strange. I read the autopsy report. His muscles had locked by the time your partner pinned him. No struggle. No resistance. Braddock swallowed. His hand gripped his belt again, but not to intimidate. This time just to stay upright. Marlene slowly took something from her coat pocket. Not a badge. Not a document. A folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges. She opened it gently, as if peeling memory from ash. You don't remember this letter, she said, voice low. But I do. There was only one copy. It arrived at my office 3 days after Micah's death, written by his mother. But at the bottom, a handwritten line, scrawled, unfinished, a child's handwriting, not yet trained. She held the paper out toward Braddock. He didn't dare take it. She read it aloud. I don't want to fight. I just want to know why. No words came out of Braddock's mouth. No sirens. No birdsong. No wind. Only silence, like the echo of a well hitting the bottom of truth. Braddock stood frozen. The slip of paper Marlene Whitford had just read still seemed to hover in the air, marked by the clumsy, aching words of a boy who never made it home. His lips parted as if to reply, but only broken silence came through. You think I just happened to be walking this street this morning? Marlene asked, her voice soft as mist, but heavy as a gavel. There are no coincidences in Oakmere Hills. Braddock glanced around as if searching for someone, a witness, a camera, an exit. Are you trying to threaten me? He asked, forcing defiance into his voice. No, she said. I'm keeping a promise. With deliberate care, she opened a side flap of her coat. From a silk-lined pocket, she pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope, sealed with the gold-embossed insignia of the U.S. Federal Court, Eastern District. In that moment, the air itself seemed to still. Braddock looked at it like it was an unexploded bomb, because to him, that's exactly what it was. This, Marlene said, extending the envelope without a tremor, is the real reason I'm on this street today. You think you're the one patrolling, but in fact, you're the one being served. Braddock stepped back. His pulse thumped visibly at the base of his neck. I don't understand. You will, she cut in, within 72 hours. He didn't dare take it. She didn't rush him. She simply held out her hand, steady, like both time and the law were waiting to see how he would respond. He reached out, slowly, cautiously, and took it. The envelope was heavier than he expected, not because of the paper, but because it carried everything he'd tried to bury for the last 3 years. Where did you get this? He asked, his voice cracking. Marlene tilted her head slightly. I've been following your reappointment file since day one. I saw the blurred signature. I know who approved the waiver to skip your internal ethics check. And I know that meeting took place after hours. No cameras, no minutes. Braddock clenched the envelope, pulse thudding in his ears. He felt like he was standing at the edge of a trapdoor, every word she spoke nudging him one step closer to the drop. What are you planning to do? He asked. Marlene answered slowly. It's not what I'm planning. It's what I've already done. Braddock looked down at the envelope. Below the line federal subpoena was a bold header. To Officer Curtis Braddock, Oakmere Police Division. Subject: Reinstatement Review and Use of Force Incident. Micah Carter. A faint click echoed from somewhere down the street. A door opening in a nearby house. But he didn't turn. He couldn't. What was in front of him was already enough to ruin him. Marlene spoke one last sentence, quiet, but sharp as a blade sliding across stone. Justice isn't accidental. It's scheduled. Then she turned. No rush. No drama. Just closure. Curtis Braddock stood there with the envelope in hand. It felt like a block of searing iron, not hot enough to drop, but far too heavy to hide. Marlene Whitford stepped off the sidewalk, her silhouette drifting through the soft sunlight of Oakmere Hills like a shadow pulled from history. Silent, but impossible to ignore. Braddock backed toward the cruiser, his fingers stiff on the radio mic. He didn't call immediately. Some part of him still clung to the hope that this was a performance. A power play by an old woman who had gone too far. He inhaled. Pressed the button. Dispatch. This is Unit 12. I need verification on a federal document. Appears to be a subpoena from U.S. Federal Court, Eastern District. Name listed is Curtis Braddock. Requesting confirmation. Silence. A crow glided across the street. Its shadow skimmed the roof of his patrol car like the trim of a funeral banner. Then the system clicked back to life. Unit 12, confirmed. Subpoena is valid. Reference number TFC 4189-72. Registered 3 days ago. Legally sealed and issued by the Federal Conduct Authority. Braddock straightened his neck. Are there any directives? Another pause, long as the echo in a courtroom. Do not interfere. Do not contest. You have no right of refusal. Comply. Any obstruction will be treated as a criminal offense under Code 78C. His knees buckled slightly. Sweat broke at the back of his neck. His right hand still touched his holster, reflexively, but it was useless now. Not because it was unloaded, but because the system he once believed to be a shield had turned its weapon on him. He repeated the words, like confirming them to himself. It's real. The female dispatcher's voice came through, calm and clear. Confirmed, Officer Braddock. The order is active. A physical copy is en route to Oakmere Police Division. Delivery expected tomorrow morning. He let go of the radio. That was the moment Braddock realized there were no exits designed for men like him when the system decided it was done protecting them. No more deleted emails. No more silent nods in closed-door meetings. No more hearing reports pulled last minute. Today, the law didn't stand with a badge. It stood with the truth, armed, filed, and waiting. He lowered his head, fingers brushing the edge of the envelope. The embossed seal shimmered faintly under the light. He didn't need to open it to know what it held. A list of charges, a date to appear, an old case file long buried. This time, he was the subject under review. And the person reopening the file was a 68-year-old woman in a lilac coat, holding a black cane, whose memory had never gone to sleep. 2 days later, Marlene Whitford entered a room filled with power, but lacking a conscience. The headquarters of the Federal Conduct Authority sat in a gray concrete tower downtown, far from the sunlight, and even farther from justice. Here, the biggest decisions were rarely made through discussion, but through silence bought and paid for. There were 8 people in the room, all in dark suits, eyes as sharp as scalpels. They had once voted against her motions for investigation. They had once said, "That matter is too sensitive. Touching Braddock will open a can of worms. We don't see sufficient evidence." Now, they had to look her in the eye. Marlene did not sit. She stood at the head of the table, her lilac coat folded neatly over one arm, her black cane upright beside her like a living witness. No introduction, no flattery. She wasn't here to persuade. She was here to expose. She placed a thick folder on the table, tightly bound, clearly indexed. Internal emails that were forgotten to be sent. A reappointment approval form with no federal case number. Security camera logs manually edited under an account labeled H. Baines, one of the people now sitting directly across from her. The meeting room was colder than usual, but the chill didn't come from the air conditioning. Marlene activated a small device, placed it in the center of the table. She pressed a button. A recording played, the voice of Baines himself, from an internal meeting 3 years ago. I'm not saying Braddock is innocent, but if we expose that file, we'll lose our federal funding. Just let it fade. The kid wasn't anyone important anyway. Silence. Baines turned pale. His fingers tapped the table, then went still. Another board member let out a slow exhale and turned to her. Judge Whitford, are you trying to overturn the entire system? She looked him straight in the eye. No, I'm just forcing the system to look at itself. In that moment, the table was no longer a place for signatures. It became evidence of complicity. And today, the witnesses weren't civilians. They were the very names who once believed they stood above consequence. Marlene stepped forward and pulled out one final document, a formal request for full investigation of Braddock's reappointment, complete with OFR verification stamps. I don't need a press conference, she said. I need a transcript, an action. No one objected. The storm she brought had no wind, only documents, proof, and memory. But it swept away everything they had called stability. One council member bowed his head. Another left the room. Another's hand trembled over his notes. She didn't need a closing statement. She was the closing statement they couldn't rewrite. A teacher in Idaho wrote it on her classroom board. A street artist in Oakland sprayed it across a red brick wall. A veteran in Texas carved it into a wooden cross outside his home. A 10-year-old recited it out loud for her grandmother. Justice doesn't need to shout to be right. It wasn't a weapon. It was a mirror. It reflected every action, every rushed judgment, every complicit silence. And it made people reflect, not out of fear, but because it rang true. And as for her, Marlene returned to her office, just like any other day. Third-floor room, dim lighting, worn wooden chairs, a silver teapot by the window. She organized files, reviewed documents, signed off on long-overdue cases. No one saw her smile, but no one saw her hide, either. To her, justice didn't need a stage. It just needed someone to keep it alive every day. When a young assistant asked, "Do you feel satisfied seeing him fall?" she replied without looking up, "Satisfaction doesn't save anyone. Doing the right thing does." Outside, the air was still, but inside, the story wasn't over. Not through headlines, but through quiet, relentless action. On the final night of the month, rain swept through Oakmere. Curtis Braddock returned quietly to his third-floor apartment, hair drenched, shoes squelching against the hallway carpet. He was no longer an officer. His rank had been stripped, his authority gone. A formal suspension was awaiting final signature. But what chilled him most was the emptiness from within. He dropped his bag to the floor and approached his desk, intending to open his laptop, only to find something already waiting there. A wooden box. No return address. No sender's name. Just a single line engraved on the lid. Not to punish, but to remind you, we haven't forgotten. Braddock opened the lid. Inside was a stack of aged documents. Witness statements. Internal reports. Complaints that had been redacted. And a letter. The paper was yellowed. The handwriting slanted, juvenile. At the top it read, Micah Carter, written by his best friend, Jordan Wells, who no longer had the chance to write it himself. The note contained just one sentence. I don't understand why he died. I just want someone, an adult, to explain it to me. Braddock's hands trembled. His head leaned against the back of the chair. His breath came in shallow bursts, not from anger, but from the feeling of being seen, not by a courtroom, but by memory. He had once believed that time would erase it all, that if no one brought it up again, the past would simply dissolve. But now he understood. Some questions don't need to be shouted. They just need to exist long enough to make the guilty unable to hide. Beneath the letter was a small slip of paper pinned from the folder. Federal Conduct Authority, Clause 9C. No one, not even retirees, is exempt from responsibility for past misconduct. No signature, but he knew who it was from. Marlene Whitford didn't seek revenge. She let the truth do that. The next morning, in a small column at the bottom of the Southeast Daily Ledger, readers found a single paragraph. A bullet can take one life, but an unanswered question can change an entire system. Signed, Someone who read that letter 3 years ago and never forgot. The final message? Justice doesn't arrive instantly. It doesn't come with a gavel. But it comes if someone is willing to hold on to the question and brave enough to place it in front of the one who once turned away. Justice doesn't need to shout. It just needs someone who remembers.